Hi, this is Maria Williams. In this video, I'm going to show you how to make this card, but with foil flowers and the decorative label punch. So here's the sample card that we're going to be making today with a couple of variations. I'm going to be using the Blooming Hearts Thinlit dies as well as the Better Together stamp set, in particular the Here's to a Great Wedding sentiment. I have already prepared the basic pieces of cardstock and paper for my card. So I'm starting with a Sahara Sand card base that's cut at 5.5 by 8.5 and scored at 4 1/4. A piece of the Neutrals Gold paper cut at 5.5 by 2 3/4. A piece of Pink Pirouette that's cut at 5.5 by 2.5, and a piece of vellum cardstock that is cut at 8.5 by 2.5, so the same width as the Pink Pirouette piece, since it's going to be wrapped around the Pink Pirouette piece. So I'm placing the Pink Pirouette piece over the vellum, and I'm going to take just a stylus, and I'm going to run it along the sides of the Pink Pirouette so that it scores the vellum just enough that when I wrap it around, it will give me a nice clean crease. You could also just wrap it around without doing this and then kind of run your nail along the edge, but I think that this gives you a little bit of a better fold. Once I have my pieces folded back, I'm just going to take my Stampin' Up! Snail and run a little bit on the vellum and then fold it over, making sure that all the edges are properly aligned. Next, I add some snail to the back of the Pink Pirouette piece, mount that onto the piece of gold designer series paper, and then add snail to the back of that and attach all that to the front of my card. The next step is to grab a piece of Whisper White cardstock and my die, and I'm going to take it to my die cutting machine and die cut the heart. And once it's die cut, I'm using my die brush and the foam pad to take out all the little chads from the heart, and you will see that the vast majority of the chads come out with the brush. I just have a couple more that I have to push out with my fingers. I should mention that I used the precision plate to cut this, and I did run it back and forth twice, so it went through the die cutting machine 4 times total, but as you can see, it die cut perfectly. Now I'm going to cut the flowers out of some foil sheet. I've already die cut 4, 2 large ones and 2 small ones, and I'm just going to show you how I'm die cutting another one of the small ones. I need a total of 5 flowers for my card, and it cuts beautifully just running it one time through the die cutting machine, and I did run it there and back just because it's easier for the video than trying to take it out the other side. And then I'm just using my stylus to push through the holes and get the flower to come out. And sometimes you get some little marks on your die cuts when you have those little ejection holes, so I'm going to show you how to take care of that. All you have to do is take your die cuts and place them on a piece of cardstock, one that's not too thick, and then place another piece of cardstock on top and use the same sandwich as you did for die cutting with a plate that's hopefully not as worn as mine. Mine's pretty worn, but I think it'll be okay. And then run this through the die cutting machine. And you don't have to run it through twice. I'm just doing it because it's easier for me to pull everything out from the same end that I'm putting it in. But you'll see that when I take these flowers back out, that there are no raised little bumps from those ejection holes at all. They look really nice and smooth. So now I'm just taking my heart die cut and I'm just placing the flowers on top of it so that I can get them all nicely lined up before I glue them down. And then I'm just going to use the fine tip glue pen to apply some glue onto the white die cut instead of doing it onto the flowers. I find it easier when I have small die cuts to just apply the glue onto the larger piece and then set the little die cut on top and make sure that I have it nicely lined up. That way I don't get any glue on my fingers at all. The other thing that I'm doing here is when I'm applying the glue, I'm making sure to apply the glue around the edges of the flower and not in the middle, because since the flowers have the die cut flowers that I'm putting on top have a little hole in the center. I don't want any glue oozing through, so I'm just making sure to put it around the edges of the flower on the die cut heart. Now that my focal point is all assembled, I'm going to apply some more liquid glue onto the backs of the flowers that are going across the pink pirouette panel. I'm not putting it anywhere else because I don't because there's a little bit of a difference in the level and I don't want the heart to be bent back or anything. So I'm just putting it on the flowers that are on the highest part of the card, and I'm placing a large block on top to make sure that everything dries properly. And then I'm going to work on the last piece of my card, which is the sentiment. I'm taking a piece of white cardstock and I'm trimming it down to a width of about 1 1/16, somewhere in between 1/16 and 1 1/8. And you'll see why a little bit later. And I'm going to emboss the sentiment with gold. So I'm taking my embossing buddy, prepping my piece of cardstock, and I see there's a little stain, so I'm just flipping it over, prepping it with the embossing buddy, grabbing some Versamark ink, and stamping the sentiment right in the middle of this strip. I was having a little bit of a hard time seeing the edges of my strip of cardstock, so I went ahead and put a piece of Sahara sand underneath so I could see it clearly. Stamped it, and then I'm grabbing my gold embossing powder. I like to keep my most used embossing powders in large containers like this because it makes it so easy to use, and you don't have to pour extra embossing powder back into a little container or anything. So I'm now grabbing my embossing tool, making sure that it's nice and hot, and embossing the sentiment. To add decorative ends to my strip, I'm using the Modern Label punch and inserting the strip so that only one end is being cut. I'm very carefully lining that up to the center of the label, and I will get a pretty clean cut on the edge. And if I don't, which I didn't get it 100%, I'm going to take a little emery board. I think this one came with an eyelet setter kit that I bought a while back. But you can use any cardboard nail file or even a little piece of sandpaper to smooth out the edges. I forgot to turn on my camera the first time that I created the sentiment and attached it to my card, so I don't have the part where I attach the sentiment to the front of the card, but I just used some dimensionals and placed it overlapping the right side of the heart. So that's all there is to making this card. I like both of them, I think, equally. One's a little more feminine than the other. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, please give me a thumbs up. If you would like to see more pictures or purchase any of the products used in this video, please visit my blog at mariascardsandmore.com. Thanks for watching!